Hey everyone. Tonight we begin not in a battlefield or a palace, but in a cemetery high in the Pamir Mountains. The drums pound, flames leap, and mourners sway as thick smoke fills the night air. This isn't incense, it's cannabis, burning so hot with THC that the living stumble into visions as if walking beside the dead. From the kitchen pot where opium was stirred into soup, to the wedding chamber hazed in golden aphrodisiac, and the noble banquets where powders of stone sent elites stripping naked in winter drugs were not hidden in ancient China. They were woven into daily life. From farmers' ropes to emperors' chalices, from healing remedies to deadly rituals. If you want the raw stories of how an empire sought immortality, ecstasy, and escape and what it cost, hit like and subscribe. And tell me in the comments which forgotten corner of history shocks you most. You feel the chill of the Pamir Mountains slowly recede, but the echo of those drums, the faint scent of burning cannabis, lingers. You stand now, not in a single moment of grief, but on the precipice of a vast, ancient world, an empire woven with unseen threads of smoke and powder, of dreams and despair. Imagine stepping through a forgotten doorway, leaving behind the modern world, and finding yourself in the bustling heart of ancient China. The air around you isn't just filled with the scent of spices and bustling markets. It carries a deeper, more mysterious fragrance. The subtle, often unrecognized, aroma of powerful substances shaping lives in ways you might never expect. You see it in quiet villages, where the gentle smoke from a farmer's pipe is not always tobacco. You sense it in grand, hushed palaces, where emperors seek not just power, but eternal life in the whispers of special brews. You hear it in tales told around crackling hearths, stories of ancient healers and shamans who knew secrets of plants that could mend or break a spirit. It's an almost invisible force, touching every corner of existence, from the simplest kitchen to the most sacred tomb, from the fields where sustenance grew to the battlefields where life was lost. This wasn't an empire defined solely by its majestic Great Wall or its exquisite silk roads. It was also intricately linked to the earth's potent gifts or curses. The very ground you walk upon nurtured plants that would soothe pain, incite visions, grant courage, or, unknowingly, steal souls. The boundaries between medicine and recreation, spiritual journey and dangerous indulgence, were often blurred, almost non-existent. For many, these substances were not drugs as we understand them today, but simply tools, aspects of daily life, as common as the rice in their bowls or the tea in their cups. They were part of the rhythm of life, of birth and death, sickness and health, joy and sorrow. This story is vast, stretching across centuries, mountains and rivers, through the lives of countless individuals. And as you breathe in the subtle, ancient air, you know that the journey into this hidden history has only just begun. The echoes of that funeral in Jirzankal, the hazy visions, the swaying bodies, they were just the first page of a much larger, more complex narrative. Let us gently turn to the next chapter, where a humble flower begins its quiet, powerful journey into the heart of an empire. You step out of the mountain air and into a small, sun-drenched village. The rhythm of daily life surrounds you, the gentle clucking of chickens, the distant lowing of a water buffalo, the soft thud of a pestle in a mortar. Here, amidst the simple dwellings and hard-working hands, you witness the quiet arrival of a plant that would eventually reshape destiny's opium, but not yet the menace you might imagine. In these early days, centuries ago, it arrived as a gentle harbinger of relief, a humble painkiller, treated with the same reverence as the most cherished herbs. Imagine yourself in a dimly lit, mud brick home. You can almost feel the warmth of the hearth fire, smell the earthy aroma of simmering broth. A mother, her face etched with worry, bends over a small, restless child, feverish and weak. With practiced hands, she stirs a spoonful of a dark, viscous substance into a bowl of thin, nourishing soup. It's a remedy passed down through generations, the opium poppy's gift, dissolved into the child's sustenance. You watch as the child, after a few sips, begins to quiet, the tiny body relaxing, the harsh cough subsiding into a gentle flutter. For this mother, it is not a drug, but a blessing, a moment of peace, a lullaby in liquid form. Walk with me further, past the village, towards a makeshift encampment where soldiers, weary and wounded, tend to their injuries. Here, you see a village herbal doctor carefully administering a small portion of the same potent substance. A soldier, his arm throbbing from a battle wound, grunts in pain. The doctor offers him a paste, a small, dark pellet. You see the tension in the soldier's face slowly ease. His shoulders relax. The pain, a relentless gnawing beast, begins to retreat, replaced by a dull, hazy comfort. This, too, is opium, acting as a shield against agony, a temporary reprieve in a harsh world. It's a silent agreement between the plant and humanity. I will offer you solace. To these common folk, opium was akin to other revered natural remedies like ginseng or ginger. They saw it as a beneficial plant, a gift from nature, a tool for healing. Yet, even in its innocent guise, its true power was already beginning to reveal itself. In the bustling night markets, under the soft glow of paper lanterns, you might catch a glimpse of small, dark lumps being exchanged. Each grain, you learn, was said to be worth its weight in pure gold. A paradox, isn't it? A humble healer, yet a precious commodity, a simple ingredient in a bowl of porridge, yet capable of forging chains that would bind generations. You feel a subtle unease, a premonition, knowing the quiet origins of such a powerful force. This era, so seemingly benign, was planting the seeds of a future where that golden promise would turn into a golden trap. As the centuries drift by, like gentle currents in a wide river, you find yourself transported to the vibrant, intricate world of the Ming Dynasty. The air here is richer, scented with exotic perfumes and the distant murmur of scholarly pursuits. Opium, once a humble village healer, has begun its ascent, not just into common folks' medicine cabinets, but into the gilded chambers of the wealthy, transforming into something far more alluring, the golden aphrodisiac. Imagine peering through a silken curtain into a grand wedding chamber, bathed in the soft, flickering light of oil lamps. The air is thick, not just with anticipation, but with the sweet, heavy scent of burning opium. You see a wealthy groom, adorned in finery, deliberately inhaling the drug, for him, and for many like him in the privileged echelons. Opium had become more than a pain reliever. It was a vitality booster, an enhancer of pleasure, a key to unlocking deeper sensations, praised even by esteemed physicians in the 15th century. It was a ritual, a perceived path to heightened intimacy, a secret shared among the elite. You can almost feel the languid, luxurious haze, the slow unraveling of inhibitions. This was opium as a symbol of indulgence, a whisper of power and pleasure, reserved for those who could afford its golden price. But then, the scene shifts, and you are no longer in the opulent warmth of a noble's chamber. You find yourself in the stark, shadow-laden alleys of the city's slums, where the chill wind bites through thin garments. Here, the scent of opium is different. Not a luxurious perfume, but a desperate, acrid tang. You see gaunt figures, their eyes hollow, their hands trembling, scraping for crumbs, for the merest residue of the same drug. They are not seeking enhanced pleasure. They are seeking survival. For these impoverished souls, a tiny piece of opium might be the only available remedy for the agonizing grip of diarrhea, or the relentless gnaw of stomach pain. It is a grim, heartbreaking contrast, the privileged wrapped in a blissful, hazy embrace, while the peasants cling to fragments of the same substance, not for luxury, but to simply quell agony, unknowingly drawing themselves into a different kind of trap. The trade of opium had also transformed. It was no longer just a bartered item. It was a currency in itself, literally weighed against gold in hushed transactions. From intimate bedrooms to communal tea houses, the tendrils of narcotics were weaving deeper into the very breath of everyday life. You sense the growing tension, the widening chasm between those who commanded the drug for pleasure and those who craved it for survival. The veil of innocence that once shrouded opium was thinning, revealing a more complex, dual nature, a substance of profound comfort and profound dependency, binding together the highest and lowest strata of society in its intoxicating grasp. The gentle flow of time brings you to the 16th century, a period of burgeoning maritime trade and global connections. The air now carries the exotic scent of foreign spices, mixed with the salt spray of the ocean. Portuguese traders, with their adventurous spirits and ships laden with goods, arrived on China's shores, not just bringing silks and porcelain, but also a new, insidious method of consuming opium that would forever alter its destiny, mixing opium with alcohol. Imagine a grand merchant banquet, perhaps in a bustling port city like Macau or Guangzhou. You hear the clinking of porcelain cups, the murmur of foreign tongues blending with local dialects, the boisterous laughter. But this is no ordinary feast. The tables are laden not only with delectable dishes and fine wines, but also with small, ornate pipes and dark, sticky opium. The Portuguese demonstrated how to combine the two intoxicants, creating a double intoxication, a powerful, dizzying euphoria. You watch as merchants, eager to impress, and officials, intrigued, partake in this novel ritual. The liquor amplified the opium's effects, creating a deeper, more profound state of altered consciousness. Conversations grew louder, then softer, then drifted into contented silence, eyes glazed, minds far away. This deadly recipe, initially a novelty among the wealthy, quickly spread. Like ripples in a pond, the habit moved outwards. Guards at city gates found solace in the potent mix. Sailors, returning from long voyages, sought its embrace. Peasants, ever seeking escape from their arduous lives, soon copied the habit. You see the transformation of the humble tavern, once a place of lively chatter, into a den of haze. The walls, once smelling only of fermented grains, now absorbed the thick, sweet, suffocating narcotic smoke, mingling with alcohol fumes, creating an atmosphere of languid oblivion. The casual use of opium, once a quiet family remedy, now bloomed into widespread recreational indulgence. The consequences, though initially subtle, began to fester. By 1729, the empire's leaders could no longer ignore the escalating crisis. You feel the weight of Emperor Yongzheng's decision. His frustration palpable as he was forced to issue a decree recreational use of opium was to be outlawed. This was a monumental turning point. Opium, once seen as a beneficent medicine, was officially declared a menace. The emperor's edict was a recognition of the drug's true nature when unleashed without restraint. A realization that its power could destroy as easily as it could soothe. The gentle healer had fully transformed into a formidable adversary, leaving behind a trail of addiction and societal decay, setting the stage for centuries of struggle and conflict that would forever scar the proud empire. The Portuguese traders, in their pursuit of profit, had inadvertently introduced a poison that would unravel the very fabric of Chinese society. Leaving the somber dens of opium haze, you journey into a different landscape, one where another powerful plant, cannabis, known as dama, has long been intertwined with the lives of the Chinese people, not as an imported vice, but as an ancient companion. Here, the air is clean, filled with the scent of rich earth and growing things, a stark contrast to the heavy, sweet scent of opium. Cannabis was ubiquitous, an integral part of the agricultural rhythm, a truly versatile plant that offered sustenance, utility, and, profoundly, a bridge to other realms. Imagine yourself walking through vast fields under a wide, blue sky. The tall, green stalks of hemp sway gently in the breeze, their leaves rustling a quiet song. You see farmers, their hands calloused, harvesting these plants. For them, cannabis was a practical gift from the earth. Its fibers were woven into strong ropes, essential for daily tasks, for securing boats. Its pulp was processed into paper, the very medium that carried the empire's stories, laws, and philosophies. From its fibers, durable fabric was made, clothing the common people, and for warriors, the resilient fibers were even crafted into bowstrings, giving power to their arrows. It was a plant of functionality, a silent workhorse, serving the empire's practical needs with quiet efficiency. As the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, you witness another aspect of cannabis's role. After a long day of strenuous labor, when muscles ached and bones were weary, you see farmers gather, not around a jug of wine, but around a small, smoking brazier. They inhale the familiar scent of cannabis smoke, a ritual of release, the subtle euphoria, the dulling of physical pain, the easing of the mind. These were the rewards of a day well spent. For them, it was a simple, natural way to unwind, to soothe their aching bodies, to find a moment of peace before another day of toil. You feel the collective sigh of relief, the slowing of breath, the quiet camaraderie as the day's burdens are gently lifted by the smoke. Yet, cannabis held a deeper, more mystical significance. Return to the sacred space of a funeral, perhaps similar to the one in the Pamirs, in the flickering firelight, among the grieving community. You witness cannabis being burned, not for personal relief, but for a profound spiritual purpose. Thick, pungent smoke billows upwards, filling the air, creating a hazy, ethereal atmosphere. The mourners inhale deeply, their eyes growing glassy, their movements becoming more fluid and dreamlike. For them, this wasn't an escape. It was a journey, a conscious effort to walk with their departed loved ones. The fumes were believed to enable the living to accompany the dead into the next world, to offer guidance, to share a final, shared experience. The burial transformed into a village-wide trip, a collective spiritual voyage, where the veil between worlds thinned and the boundaries of consciousness expanded. To the common people, hemp was truly a plant of two worlds. By day, it was a tool for life, aiding their labor, providing materials for their survival. By night, it became a gateway to spirits, a conduit for communion, a key to unlock hidden dimensions. You marvel at its duality, from plowing the fields to journeying into the realms of altered consciousness. This ancient plant, so rooted in the earth, also reached for the sky, touching both the practical and the profound aspects of ancient Chinese existence. The journey with cannabis continues, moving beyond the fields and the funeral pyres, into the realms of legend and pioneering medical science. You stand on the threshold of ancient wisdom, where myth and practicality merge, revealing cannabis not just as a spiritual guide or a farmer's friend, but as a groundbreaking medicinal agent that forever changed the landscape of healing. Imagine yourself transported back to a time so ancient that its origins blur into myth. You hear the whispers of the revered emperor Shen Nong, a legendary figure, the divine farmer who taught his people agriculture and medicine. Legend attributes to him the Pen Cao, one of the earliest pharmacopoeias, in its venerable pages. Cannabis is said to have been described, not just for its fibers, but for its profound properties in balancing yin and yang. It was seen as a restorative, a balancer, a plant imbued with the subtle power to bring equilibrium back to a disordered system. In quiet villages, far removed from grand palaces, you observe the enduring legacy of this ancient knowledge. Cannabis was not only smoked, but also meticulously boiled into healing brews. You see workers, their bodies strained from physical exertion, and soldiers, weary from their campaigns, being given these bitter, earthy concoctions. These brews were believed to alleviate pain, reduce inflammation, and restore strength, becoming a common, trusted remedy. Then, the narrative shifts, and you are introduced to a figure of immense medical genius, physician Hua Tuo. He emerges from the annals of the later Han Dynasty, a pioneer whose innovations were centuries ahead of his time. Hua Tuo took the understanding of cannabis to an unprecedented level, applying it in a context that would astonish even modern sensibilities. He utilized cannabis not just as a pain reliever or tonic, but as a powerful anesthetic for surgery. Envision yourself in a quiet, sterile-for-the-time chamber. A patient, awaiting a complex surgical procedure, lies apprehensive. Hua Tuo, with his calm demeanor and profound knowledge, prepares his unique formulation, Mafi-san, cannabis boiling powder. He administers this compound, which likely contained cannabis along with other herbs. You watch as the patient's anxiety dissipates, the facial muscles relax, and the body slowly succumbs to a deep, profound sleep. The patient is lulled to sleep, consciousness gently clouded, senses dulled, before Hua Tuo's skilled knives begin their work. This was the world's first known instance of surgical anesthesia using cannabis, a revolutionary application that allowed for intricate procedures to be performed without excruciating pain. From ancient tomb rituals meant to guide the dead, to the cutting-edge operating tables that saved the living, Cannabis profoundly reshaped the very meaning of medicine. You contemplate the incredible journey of this single plant, from a simple fiber provider to a spiritual guide, to a legendary healer, and ultimately, to a sophisticated tool of surgery. Its story in ancient China is a testament to humanity's enduring quest to harness the power of nature, to alleviate suffering, and to explore the boundaries of existence. You leave the pragmatic world of cannabis and enter a realm steeped in mysticism, ambition, and the fervent desire for eternal life. The air here is no longer earthy and common, but tinged with the subtle, sweet scent of ancient forests and the heavy perfume of burning incense. You are now in the majestic, gilded halls of imperial China, where emperors pursued the ultimate conquest, immortality. And at the heart of this quest lay a remarkable fungus, revered above all others, lingzhi, the reishi mushroom. Imagine standing in a grand throne room, its intricate carvings and vibrant frescoes depicting celestial beings. You watch as an emperor, clad in robes of finest silk, his face a mask of solemn authority, partakes in a daily ritual, a small, exquisite cup, perhaps jade or gold, is brought to him. It contains a dark, potent decoction, a tea brewed from the woody, fan-shaped lingzhi mushroom. For these rulers, lingzhi was not merely a medicine, it was the elixir of eternal life, a sacred substance believed to hold the key to transcending mortal bounds. With each sip, the emperor hoped to nourish his essence, to fortify his spirit, and ultimately, to ascend to the realm of the immortals. You can almost feel the weight of this hope, this profound yearning to defeat death itself. The allure of lingzhi extended beyond the imperial court, reaching into the spiritual practices of Taoist priests. Journey with me to a secluded temple nestled high in the mountains. Here, Taoist practitioners, seeking enlightenment and communion with the spirit world, would serve lingzhi to their devout believers. It was offered as a means to achieve spirit sight, the ability to see and speak with ghosts, to perceive the hidden dimensions of existence. You observe the hushed reverence, the quiet anticipation, as the faithful consume the sacred brew, hoping to unlock their spiritual senses, to gain wisdom from beyond the veil. But with such immense power came profound risks. Whispers circulated through the court and across the land, cautionary tales that clung to the fringes of this immortal dream. Rumors spoke of rulers, so desperate in their pursuit of eternity, who overdosed on the potent lingzhi concoctions. Instead of ascending, these unfortunate emperors were said to have lost their very souls, their minds succumbing to madness, their bodies wasting away before they could ever grasp immortality. You sense the chilling paradox, a substance promising endless life, yet capable of ushering in a premature, deluded demise. The fine line between divine aspiration and dangerous delusion was often blurred. Lingzhi, therefore, became a powerful symbol, both of divinity and of profound delusion. It was a mushroom that fueled China's enduring obsession with eternity, a testament to humanity's timeless yearning for something beyond the finite. You ponder the weight of such a dream, the lengths to which individuals, even those with absolute power, would go to escape the inevitable. As the pursuit of immortality lingers in the imperial imagination, you turn your attention to a darker, more perilous corner of ancient Chinese life, where plants held a different kind of power, one that straddled the line between sacred ritual and lethal poison. You step away from the grandeur of emperors and into the shadowy, often feared, domain of shamans and folk magic, where the plant known as pokeweed, or shanglu, reigned supreme in its dual capacity for mystical insight and deadly consequence. Imagine a remote village, nestled deep within a valley, where ancient traditions hold sway. The air here is charged with a primal energy, a mix of reverence and apprehension. You observe a shaman, cloaked in furs and adorned with intricate bone carvings, preparing for a powerful ritual. The shaman holds up a plant with distinctive red berries and a deep, reddish stem, red pokeweed. This variety, you learn, was considered lethally poisonous. Yet, in the hands of the shaman, it was not merely an instrument of death, but a sacred tool, used to summon spirits from the underworld, to pierce the veil between worlds, to communicate with ancestral entities. You can almost feel the collective tremble of the villagers, knowing the inherent danger, yet compelled by the shaman's power. Now, shift your gaze to another preparation. The shaman might also be working with white pokeweed, a different variety. This form, when carefully brewed with wine, was said to induce milder hallucinations. It was believed to prolong life, offering a gentler, yet still potent, alteration of consciousness. Villagers, yearning for longevity, might partake in these rituals, trembling with a mix of excitement and terror. Yet, the inherent danger of such potent plants was ever present. You witnessed the tragic consequences of misjudgment. Many, tragically, died from misjudged doses. The line between a transformative spiritual experience and irreversible poisoning was incredibly thin, a razor's edge. The powerful effects of pokeweed made it a plant of immense respect and profound fear. It was whispered about in folk tales as the wine of death, a potent brew capable of killing swiftly. Yet, despite its infamous reputation, its allure was too strong for many to resist. Pokeweed, therefore, stands as a stark reminder of humanity's perilous dance with nature's most potent gifts, delicately balanced between sacred rite and lethal poison. You feel the gravity of these choices, the raw desperation, and the immense trust placed in ancient knowledge, sometimes at the ultimate cost. Leaving the shadowy rituals of pokeweed, you are now transported to a different stratum of ancient Chinese society, a world of refinement, intellectual pursuit, and ultimately, a self-destructive indulgence that mirrored the empire's eventual decline. The period is the 3rd to 5th centuries, a turbulent era where a new, sophisticated, and incredibly dangerous substance captivated the elite 5-stone powder, or wuxia. This was not a plant from the earth, but a manufactured compound, an ancient synthetic narcotic, a dark predecessor to modern designer drugs, promising euphoria but delivering madness and ruin. Imagine yourself in a grand estate, perhaps belonging to a scholar or high-ranking official. The air is cool, even in winter, and carries the faint scent of minerals and something else, something sharp and chemical. You observe the upper classes, the intellectuals, the aesthetes, embracing 5-stone powder with zealous devotion. This elaborate concoction was painstakingly created from a blend of minerals, stalactites, fluorite, quartz, sulfur, and kaolin. It was a complex alchemical blend, a testament to both ancient scientific curiosity and profound human vulnerability. The effects of wuxia were dramatic, immediate, and utterly captivating. You witnessed the startling transformation. After ingesting the powder, their bodies would experience a skyrocketing internal heat, an intense feverish flush. To counteract this searing heat, Users would engage in bizarre and dangerous behaviors. You see them eating handfuls of snow, their mouths numbed by the cold, attempting to quell the fiery sensation within. More strikingly, some would shed their elaborate robes, walking naked in the biting winter snow, their bodies steaming in the cold, their minds lost in an altered state. It was a spectacle of both liberation and derangement. Beyond the physical manifestations, 5-stone powder induced profound psychological effects. You hear echoes of wild, uninhibited laughter ringing through elegant courtyards. Users experienced intense euphoria, a feeling of boundless joy and energy. Hallucinations were common, twisting reality into vivid, dreamlike states, blurring the line between what was real and what was imagined. Parties, once venues for refined conversation, devolved into frenzied gatherings where inhibitions vanished. It was the ultimate escape for the jaded elite, a thrill that promised boundless pleasure and profound insight. However, the dark side of this indulgence was truly devastating. You see the long-term consequences unfold. Chronic abuse led to debilitating physical ailments, swollen limbs, painful inflammation. More tragically, it led to deranged minds. Individuals who once commanded respect and intellect now lost in a fog of confusion and madness. Their sanity fractured beyond repair, and for many, the ultimate price was sudden death. Their bodies, ravaged by the powerful minerals and extreme lifestyle choices, simply giving out. It was, in essence, the crystal meth of ancient China, a highly addictive and destructive synthetic narcotic that transformed sophisticated elites into mad, desperate souls, their pursuit of transcendent pleasure ending in a spiral of ruin and despair. This powdered folly laid bare the vulnerability of even the most privileged, revealing that the desire for altered states could claim anyone. You stand now at the culmination of this extraordinary journey through ancient China, and the echoes of centuries of use, of pleasure, of pain, and of desperation resonate around you. The vivid images of burning cannabis, opium-laced soup, imperial lingji, shamanic pokeweed, and the wild dances fueled by 5-stone powder coalesce into a powerful understanding. This wasn't merely a history of an empire. It was a history intimately intertwined with the subtle, pervasive, and often overwhelming influence of drugs. Reflect on the quiet kitchens, where opium first offered a mother's comfort in a bowl of soup. Then, recall the opulent wedding chambers, where that same substance transformed into a golden aphrodisiac, a symbol of luxury. You see the arc of its journey, from humble medicine to a cherished indulgence, and then, tragically, under the influence of foreign trade, to a widespread menace, culminating in imperial decrees attempting, often futilely, to stem the tide. The subtle scent of its smoke, once a sign of solace, became the heavy air of addiction. Think back to the humble cannabis, the farmer's friend, growing freely in the fields. It provided the very ropes and fabrics that sustained daily life. Yet, the same plant, when burned in funeral rites, became a spirit's companion, allowing the living to journey with the dead, transforming grief into a collective, hallucinatory voyage. And then, remember its astonishing leap into the realm of advanced medicine, becoming the world's first surgical anesthetic in the hands of a genius like Hua Tuo. From the practical to the mystical, from the fields to the operating table, cannabis was a constant, versatile presence. Consider the reverence for Lingzi, the mushroom that promised eternal life, fueling the most profound desires of emperors. You recall the image of them sipping its decoctions, dreaming of ascending to the realm of immortals, only to be met, sometimes, by the cruel reality of delusion and a premature end. And contrast that with the fearsome power of pokeweed, used by shamans to summon spirits, a plant balanced precariously between sacred ritual and lethal poison, demanding respect and fear in equal measure. These were not recreational whims, but profound engagements with the forces of nature, often driven by the deepest human aspirations. And finally, you remember the disturbing spectacle of 5-stone powder? The ancient synthetic narcotic that drove the intellectual elite to madness, to strip naked in winter snow, seeking euphoria but finding only ruin. It was the ultimate, manufactured escape. A stark reminder that the pursuit of altered states knows no social boundaries, and that the path to transcendence can quickly become a road to destruction. You understand now that China's quest for health, for spiritual connection, for heightened pleasure, and for the ultimate dream of eternity often ended in a slow, insidious form of death by narcotics. The empire, in its vastness and complexity, was not just stitched together with silk and jade, but also with these powerful, mind-altering substances. They pervaded every aspect of life: the solace of the kitchen, the pain of the battlefield, the majesty of the palace, the sacred sorrow of the cemetery. And so, you are left with a haunting question, a whisper that lingers in the ancient air. If the Portuguese traders had never introduced the method of smoking opium, if that one specific vector of consumption had never arrived, would history have truly been different? Would the trajectory of this magnificent empire have been altered? Spared from the Opium Wars and the subsequent century of humiliation? The answer remains elusive, lost in the sands of time, a story the wind will carry until morning. But the silent, powerful narrative of these substances, woven into the very fabric of ancient China, will forever remain. You find yourself standing at the precipice of an ancient world, a civilization cradled by vast rivers and guarded by towering mountain ranges. This is China, a name echoing with the grandeur of empires, the delicate artistry of silk, the transformative power of paper, the explosive innovation of gunpowder, and the profound wisdom of its myriad philosophies. It was a land of invention and enlightenment, a beacon of human ingenuity that shaped much of the global landscape for centuries. You can almost feel the texture of intricately woven silks, hear the rustle of scholarly scrolls, and taste the delicate flavors of a sophisticated cuisine. The air hums with the quiet pride of a people who achieved so much, leaving an indelible mark on the tapestry of human history. Yet, as with any grand tapestry, there are threads less vibrant, less celebrated, perhaps even somber and unsettling to our modern eyes. Alongside the brilliance and aesthetic refinement, there existed a spectrum of customs that, from our 21st century vantage point, appear nothing short of horrifying. Imagine the quiet paradox, a society capable of exquisite poetry and complex astronomical observations, yet also one where certain acts of bodily alteration or desperate measures of survival were simply woven into the everyday fabric of existence, accepted without question. Envision bustling marketplaces, serene temple courtyards, meticulously cultivated rice paddies, and the imposing imperial palace walls. Within these very settings, practices we'd now classify as extreme were then considered normal. They weren't exceptions, but integral components of life, deeply ingrained within the social structure, economy, and even spiritual beliefs of the time. Think of the complex court rituals, the strict hierarchies, the sheer struggle for survival that pushed ordinary people to extraordinary lengths. As your mind drifts through this historical landscape, you begin to perceive unsettling truths, the widespread practice of self-castration for social mobility, the grim realities of total warfare where hunger drove soldiers to unspeakable acts, peculiar medical practices relying on substances we now consider waste, and astonishingly brutal beauty standards that reshaped human bodies. These weren't aberrations, they were part of the daily rhythm, the accepted patterns of a society both incredibly refined and, in its chilling practicality, terrifyingly stark. It's a delicate balance. Understanding history, recognizing profound achievements without shying away from uncomfortable truths. You find yourself contemplating a world where the lines between magnificent and monstrous were not as clearly defined. A world that compels you to look deeper, listen more closely, and understand with a more open heart. Now, let your thoughts settle upon a deeply personal sacrifice that, for many in ancient China, represented not an end, but a desperate beginning. Imagine being born into crushing poverty, where each day was a relentless struggle for meager sustenance, where famine or disease loomed like a constant shadow. For countless young men and their families, trapped in this cycle of deprivation, a stark, almost unimaginable choice presented itself: the path of the eunuch. This wasn't a punishment, but a deliberate, often agonizing decision. It was a trade, a part of the body for a chance at a different life, far removed from the dirt and hunger of the villages. You can almost hear the quiet desperation in the voices of families, discussing the grim practicality of such a step. For a young man, often in his youth or even as a child, self-castration or forced castration was the literal ticket out of an otherwise inescapable fate. It was a brutal initiation into a world of perceived opportunity. This act, unthinkable in our modern sensibilities, held the promise of entry into the imperial palace system. Once within those hallowed, yet unforgiving walls, a eunuch was guaranteed regular wages, a true luxury, consistent food, warm shelter, and, most importantly, a measure of prestige utterly unattainable to the common peasant. You can almost feel the cold stone floors of the palace, a stark contrast to the mud and straw of a village hut. The pain, of course, would have been immense, both physically and psychologically. Imagine the crude instruments, the lack of anesthetic, the sheer agony, and the very real risk of infection and death. Yet, this excruciating pain was seen as a necessary exchange, a calculated risk for stability, security, and potential influence. It was a pragmatic, albeit gruesome, career move, socially accepted within Imperial China's hierarchical structure. This brutal decision was often celebrated by families as a profound sacrifice for collective betterment. This practice didn't just provide individual escape. It actively forged an entirely new, powerful, and distinct social class. Eunuchs weren't just servants. They were a unique caste, set apart from both common people and the educated elite. They occupied a liminal space, often feared, sometimes revered, and always essential to the functioning of the inner court. Their very existence was a testament to a society where the body could be a currency, where extreme measures were normalized in the relentless pursuit of survival and status. You can almost feel the quiet weight of this truth, the profound implications of such a system. The price of ambition, it seemed, could be incredibly high. measured not in gold, but in a piece of oneself, irrevocably given for a life beyond the ordinary. Now, shift your focus to an even more unsettling dimension of this practice, one that touches upon the deepest bonds of family and the innocence of childhood. Imagine a time when a child's future wasn't a matter of dreams, but a cold calculation of survival. For many parents in ancient China, the decision to castrate their own sons, sometimes shortly after birth, was not an act of cruelty, but rather the ultimate career investment. You might hear the hushed conversations between desperate mothers and fathers, their voices laden with love and pragmatism, convinced they were making the best choice for their offspring in a harsh world. You watch as these tiny, vulnerable boys, having no voice, no understanding, no choice in their own fate, are subjected to a procedure that would irrevocably alter their lives forever. A lifetime of manhood, of natural development, was taken from them in infancy or early childhood. There was no consultation, no consent, only the silent, unquestioning acceptance of a norm born of desperation. The rationale was chillingly straightforward. Families believed they were securing a guaranteed path out of grinding poverty. It was a gamble against a future of certain hardship, a wager that the imperial palace offered a better, more secure existence than the unpredictable life of a peasant. Picture a small, quiet village, perhaps in a time of famine, where sending a son to become a eunuch was discussed with the same seriousness as arranging a marriage. It was simply another, albeit extreme, pathway. This profound tragedy became normalized, a stark reality accepted as part of life's broader landscape. Childhood innocence, the natural trajectory of a young boy's life, was tragically diverted by economic pressures and social structures. The profound personal loss was overshadowed by the perceived collective benefit to the family. You might feel a quiet sadness contemplating the inner world of these young boys, growing up without the physical attributes of a man, yet often tasked with immense responsibilities within the imperial court. Their identities were shaped by this early, involuntary sacrifice, navigating a complex social world with a unique status that brought both privilege and a peculiar alienation. It speaks to the incredible human capacity to adapt, to find meaning even within the most challenging circumstances. This normalization of a child's tragedy underscores the vast cultural chasm between our time and theirs, reminding us that what's considered natural or right is deeply colored by specific historical and societal forces. You carry with you the quiet understanding of these lost childhoods, a testament to the profound sacrifices made in the shadows of an empire. As you delve deeper into the imperial court, you begin to observe the trajectory of these men who had made, or had made for them, such a profound sacrifice. Initially, you might see them as mere attendants, quiet figures moving through the vast, ornate halls of the inner palace, serving the emperor's consorts, concubines, and young princes. Their roles seemed humble, fetching water, lighting lamps, carrying messages, ensuring the smooth operation of the Forbidden City's most private quarters. They were the unseen hands, the silent watchers, present in every intimate corner of the imperial household, yet often overlooked. But as the slow rhythm of generations unfolded, a subtle, yet significant, shift in their influence occurred. You witness eunuchs who, through years of dedicated service and intimate proximity, raised young princes from infancy, shaping their minds, manners, and understanding of the world. Imagine the bond formed between a vulnerable royal heir and the constant, unchanging figure who watched over him day and night. These eunuchs became trusted confidants, surrogate parents, and invaluable sources of information. They learned the intricate dance of palace politics, the subtle power plays, the ambitions and weaknesses of various factions. Slowly, their influence seeped beyond the domestic sphere and into the very heart of succession and governance. Emperors, often cloistered by rigid protocol and reliant on these loyal, castrated servants who could not, theoretically, establish their own dynastic lines, began to use them as their eyes and ears. You can almost feel the weight of their gaze, observing every subtle gesture, every hushed conversation. They became conduits of information, interpreters of imperial will, and ultimately, controllers of access to the emperor himself. Their power wasn't derived from noble birth or military might, but from their unique position within the inner sanctum, making them indispensable. You might recall figures like Lord Varys from the Tales of Westeros, a master of whispers whose power derived from his network of informants and proximity to the throne. The eunuchs of ancient China played a remarkably similar role, becoming central figures in the political theater, often wielding more actual power than many high-ranking ministers. Emperors, acutely aware of this creeping influence, periodically attempted to restrict their numbers or education, recognizing that knowledge was indeed power. Yet, despite these efforts, their influence, like a persistent river carving its path through stone, only grew stronger with each passing dynasty. Their story is a quiet testament to how societal norms, even those born of desperate sacrifice, can inadvertently create pathways to immense, almost unimaginable, power in the shadows of an empire. You realize that sometimes the most potent forces are not those that roar, but those that whisper from the quiet corners of authority. As the centuries unfurled, you witness the quiet, yet profound, evolution of the eunuch system, reaching its zenith during the illustrious Ming dynasty. The earlier, more organic growth of eunuch power had, by this time, transformed into a massive, organized phenomenon, a grim reflection of the empire's vast population and the enduring grip of poverty. Imagine a scale unimaginable by the Ming dynasty. The numbers of eunuchs swelled to over 100,000 across various imperial compounds. You can almost hear the quiet shuffle of their sandals, the soft rustle of their robes, as this vast, silent army moved through the labyrinthine corridors of power. The state, recognizing the immense demand, had formalized the process. It was no longer a haphazard, individual decision, but a structured, official application system. Picture long lines stretching outside designated offices, filled with desperate men and boys, accompanied by their anxious families. Each candidate was required to pay fees, a significant sum, often involving selling precious family heirlooms or incurring crushing debt just to join the long waiting lists. This payment was a testament to desperate hope, the high stakes involved in this peculiar lottery of fate. The application process was rigorous, the competition fierce. Only a fraction of hopeful individuals were ultimately chosen. Imagine the profound tension, the quiet prayers, the agonizing wait for news that would determine a family's destiny. For those few selected, it was immense relief, a hard-won victory promising a lifetime of relative security within the imperial system. They would enter the palace walls, leaving behind hunger and uncertainty, trading one kind of suffering for another, perhaps more tolerable, form. But for the vast majority, the untold thousands rejected after making such a monumental sacrifice, The outcome was utterly tragic. You can almost feel the crushing weight of their despair. Having paid the fees, endured the procedure, and often sacrificed their potential for marriage or procreation, they were left utterly ruined for life. They possessed neither the means to secure a livelihood outside, nor the opportunity to serve within the palace. Many were condemned to become beggars, spectral figures haunting society's edges, their lives a stark warning of the system's brutal consequences. Their existence was a tragic side effect of an empire's immense social desperation. A system that promised escape but often delivered only a deeper, more profound form of entrapment. You realize that even in the most organized systems, human suffering can be an unintended, yet widespread, byproduct of societal norms and economic realities, leaving countless individuals adrift in a world they were not equipped to navigate. Now, let your mind journey to a different, more violent aspect of ancient China, the brutal and unforgiving reality of warfare. Forget romanticized notions of chivalrous combat in this era. The concept of total war was not a theory, but a grim, visceral practice. When armies clashed, the stakes were absolute, and methods were designed not just to defeat, but to utterly annihilate the enemy, blurring lines between military strategy and horrifying atrocity. You might hear the distant clash of bronze and iron, the thunder of drums, and desperate cries echoing across vast, scarred landscapes. Consider the chilling example of General Bai Qi, a name whispered with a mix of awe and terror. After a decisive victory, he ordered the burial alive of tens, perhaps hundreds, of thousands of captured enemy soldiers. Imagine the sheer scale of such an act: dusty pits, terrified faces, the earth slowly covering the living. This wasn't merely cruelty. It was a calculated strategy to break the will of any opposing force, a demonstration of absolute power to ensure the enemy could never rise again. A stark testament to the ruthless efficiency expected of military leaders. Then, shift your gaze to Emperor Fu Deng, who, in a desperate campaign, commanded his troops to march for days without rations. You can almost feel the gnawing emptiness in your stomach, the exhaustion in your limbs, the burning thirst that parches your throat, as hunger became unbearable torment. His soldiers resorted to the most primal and horrific means of survival. They consumed the flesh of captured enemies, or even their own fallen comrades. This wasn't a choice born of malice, but of absolute necessity, a testament to the extreme conditions under which these men fought and lived. The battlefield transformed into a macabre feast, where the boundaries of humanity were stretched and broken by the desperate instinct to survive. You might then recall the legend of King Zhu of Shang, whose reputation is stained with acts of extreme cruelty. He is said to have cooked his rival's son into a soup, a grotesque act of psychological warfare and personal vengeance. While such tales often grow in the retelling, they reflect a deeper truth about power and conflict. In this era, life was often cheap, and the suffering of enemies could be a tool, a message, or even a twisted form of entertainment. In ancient Chinese warfare, the strategic goal of victory often overshadowed any ethical boundaries, rendering human lives as mere pawns in a brutal, zero-sum game. You realize that the very essence of war, in this context, was stripped down to its most savage core, where the struggle for power and survival dissolved any semblance of mercy, leaving behind only the stark, unsettling echo of violence and desperate acts. Now, let's step away from the battlefield and into the intimate spaces of daily life. were a fascinating and somewhat unsettling reversal of our modern understanding of hygiene once prevailed. Imagine a world where cleanliness, as you know it, was not only uncommon, but actively viewed with suspicion. For much of ancient China, particularly during colder months, bathing was a rare event, a luxury, or even an act to be avoided. You might find yourself in a home, noticing the faint, earthy scent of unwashed bodies, a smell as ordinary and unremarkable to its inhabitants as the scent of burning wood. This lack of frequent washing wasn't simply due to a lack of resources. It was often rooted in philosophical beliefs. Taoist thought, deeply influential, held that frequent bathing could deplete the body's vital essence, its key, leading to illness. You might hear elders quietly cautioning against too much exposure to cold water, against stripping away the natural protective layers of the skin. Consequently, strong body odors, matted hair, and the telltale itch of lice infestations became not the exception, but the routine. It was simply a part of living, an accepted condition across all social classes. You can almost feel the texture of unwashed garments, the slight stickiness on skin, the constant, low-level irritation of tiny creatures moving through hair. This widespread lack of hygiene profoundly shaped daily life, influencing social interactions and personal comfort. People adapted, their senses attuned to a different baseline of olfactory experience, what we would perceive as an overwhelming assault on the senses. They experienced as the normal, ambient backdrop of their existence. Their bodies, homes, and public spaces would have presented a sensory landscape dramatically different from your own. Dirt, therefore, that was not a source of shame. It was, in many ways, an indicator of resilience, a mark of survival in a world where warmth and conserving energy were paramount, and where disease was omnipresent. To be clean, in their eyes, was not necessarily to be healthy, and in some contexts, could even be a sign of weakness. This perception creates a fascinating cultural inversion, reminding you how profoundly our understanding of health, beauty, and social propriety is shaped by the knowledge and norms of our own time. You find yourself contemplating a quiet village scene, perhaps during a long, cold winter, where the warmth of a fire and the comfort of closeness far outweighed any concern for a quick bath, leaving you with a lingering sense of a world profoundly different, yet remarkably adapted to its own conditions. Continuing our gentle exploration of ancient Chinese health beliefs, you encounter a peculiar and somewhat grotesque medical notion. In a time when the invisible causes of disease were unknown, and folk explanations filled the void, the presence of lice took on remarkably unexpected significance. You might hear the quiet, assured pronouncements of a traditional doctor or the hushed wisdom of a village elder, explaining that these tiny, blood-sucking parasites were not merely an inconvenience, but a strange indicator of a patient's vital force. Imagine a sickbed scene, a person weakened by illness, perhaps feverish. The doctor or family members would carefully observe the body, searching for these ubiquitous creatures. It was widely believed that if lice were present, actively crawling on the skin or through the hair, it meant the patient possessed enough life force or ki to sustain the parasites. Thus, the presence of lice was interpreted as a positive sign, a bizarre reassurance that the patient still held on to life and had a good chance of recovery. You can almost feel the skin prickle with the thought, sensing the unsettling connection between life and the parasites that fed upon it. Conversely, if the lice began to abandon the body, if they seemed to disappear, it was considered a dire omen. This absence was interpreted as a clear signal that the patient's life force was fading. that the body was no longer a suitable host, and that death was likely near. Imagine the quiet despair falling over a family upon discovering a loved one's body suddenly free of these unwelcome companions, recognizing it as a harbinger of the inevitable. For the poor, who often lived in close quarters, living constantly covered in lice was simply a fact of existence. You can almost feel the persistent itch, the subtle movement on the scalp, the constant companion of these parasites. In some regions, many people would routinely pick lice from their hair, not to discard them, but to eat them. This was sometimes seen as a small, protein-rich addition to a meager diet, or simply an extension of a belief system that found strange comfort in their presence. There were even folk remedies for cases of overeating lice, suggesting this practice was common enough to warrant its own concerns. This grotesque belief system, built around the presence and consumption of parasites, vividly illustrates the profound difference in how ancient societies interpreted health, disease, and the very connection between living beings, leaving you with a quiet, lingering sense of wonder at the incredible adaptability of human perception. As we continue our quiet journey into the unique world of ancient Chinese practices, prepare for an aspect of their medicine that might challenge your very sensibilities, intertwining the mundane with the truly bizarre. Imagine a time before modern pharmaceuticals, when remedies were derived not only from the natural world, but also from substances we firmly categorize as waste. In ancient China, human waste, both solid and liquid, was not merely discarded. It was widely employed and deeply valued as a source of powerful medicine. You can almost detect a faint, acrid scent in the air, a reminder of the raw, unfiltered reality of life in that era. Consider the notion of golden soup. This was not a culinary delight, but a medicinal concoction derived directly from human feces. You might hear hushed discussions among practitioners about its specific properties, its supposed ability to purify, restore balance, or combat certain ailments. Alongside this, crystallized urine was collected and used as a cure for various maladies. Picture these substances carefully prepared, perhaps dried, ground, or mixed with other herbs, transformed into a form deemed suitable for ingestion or external application. The sight and smell alone would deter a modern person. Yet for them, it was a legitimate part of their healing tradition. Perhaps most remarkably, children's urine held particularly high value. It was believed to possess unique purity and potency, making it especially sought after. You might observe it being collected with a reverence that seems utterly misplaced to your modern mind. This prized liquid was not only used directly as a remedy, but also incorporated into various culinary practices. Imagine, if you can, the sight of eggs being marinated in children's urine, or vegetables being pickled in it, not merely for flavor, but for their perceived health benefits. These were not fringe practices. They were integrated into the daily life and dietary habits of some. Doctors, trained in the traditional ways, would regularly prescribe excrement as a treatment for a range of conditions. You might hear the quiet counsel given to a patient, detailing the precise preparation and dosage of such unusual remedies. For them, it was an entirely rational, evidence-based approach, guided by centuries of observation and folk wisdom. This aspect of folk medicine blurs, for us, into the realm of horror, a stark reminder of how cultural context shapes our perceptions of what is clean, what is sacred, and what is healing. You are left with a quiet, profound realization of the vast chasm between your own era's scientific understanding and the deeply ingrained, often startling, practices that once governed health and wellness in this ancient land. Finally, let your attention drift to one of the most enduring and perhaps most viscerally disturbing practices of ancient China, the centuries-long tradition of foot binding. This was not merely a fashion trend. It was a deeply ingrained cultural obsession, a beauty standard that inflicted unimaginable pain in the relentless pursuit of a specific, idealized form. You can almost feel a phantom ache in your own feet as you contemplate the ritual that began for girls as young as 4 or 5 years old. Imagine a young girl, her bones still soft and pliable, her feet wrapped tightly with long strips of cloth. Day after day, month after month, year after year. These bindings were tightened, forcing all toes. But the big one, under the sole of the foot. You might hear her suppressed whimpers, her cries of pain, as the small bones of her foot snapped and twisted under immense pressure. Over time, the arch was broken, and the entire structure deformed into what was known as a lotus foot, a tiny, delicate, and often completely non-functional appendage, ideally measuring less than 4 inches. This excruciating process was a constant, living agony, a pain that became an inescapable part of daily existence. This practice, shockingly, lasted for over 1,000 years, transcending social classes. While it originated among the elite, it trickled down to almost all strata of society as a symbol of status, beauty, and marriageability. A woman without bound feet was often considered undesirable, unmarriageable, an outcast. You might see mothers who themselves endured the pain, performing the binding on their own daughters, believing they were ensuring their future and upholding a sacred tradition. It was a cycle of inherited suffering. The paradox here is profound. This extreme form of torture was simultaneously considered incredibly erotic by men. The tiny, deformed feet, often hidden within embroidered silk shoes, became objects of intense fetishization. You might encounter historical manuals that meticulously described 48 different ways to fondle these lotus feet, detailing their perceived sensual qualities, the way they balanced the woman's gait, the subtle scent of the bandages. It was a twisted blend of cruelty, pain, and a highly specific, deeply ingrained beauty standard that dictated a woman's worth and desirability. The ideal was a foot so small that a woman could barely walk, rendering her dependent and reinforcing societal expectations of female fragility and seclusion. As you reflect on this practice, you are left with a quiet sense of the incredible power of cultural norms to redefine beauty, to rationalize suffering, and to shape human bodies and lives in ways that seem utterly unfathomable to us now. The image of the lotus foot, both a symbol of exquisite pain and revered beauty, serves as a poignant reminder of the intricate, often unsettling, tapestry of human history. And perhaps, somewhere in the quiet dust of those ancient homes, the echoes of those silent struggles still linger, reminding you of the profound journey humanity has undertaken to reach its current understanding of compassion and self-determination.